Figaro va, figaro si, figaro tu. Sorry, y'all. Just wanted to make sure the audio was coming through. Hey, y'all, what's going on? Dakota France in here, just doing a morning check-in. Because I know nobody's probably watching. It was the last minute spur of the deal, but some people have been wondering what the hell's been going on, and I think it's about time I provide some answers. Oh, it's been crazy. But it's also been kind of comforting to find out there's a lot of people that seem to have kicked off 2025 with absolute insanity. So, shall we form a support group? I don't know. It's been interesting to see how things have been unfolding. Right now, I'm just gotten off of work and figured I'd film this real quick because due to some financial constraints behind the company, nothing bad, just didn't exactly prep enough time for certain subscriptions in order to get renewed. So I had to take care of that because running a business ain't cheap, y'all. I may have found a little loophole that helps finance everything, but some poor planning on my part in a few spots, but we're getting through it. We're getting through it. Now, if you want to help support those financial issues, please feel free to check out merch, books. We got all sorts of invites. In spite of certain people developing this mentality that if it's not posted to YouTube, it means you're just sitting on your ass. I know they don't directly say it, but they have that mentality. What's been going on behind the scenes? Well, there's been a few things. Some things that I cannot go into detail as of yet, mostly just for fear of jinxing things. I've done that plenty of times where I go to announce that there's some big project going on, then all of a sudden things go dead silent. And usually because certain things I was involved in were had a lot of moving parts, and I was not aware that certain parts were not working. So, yeah, it happens to the best of us. And with some of the circles I run in, if you talk too much too soon about certain things, you basically shoot yourself in the ass as far as being able to actually perform any work. I've told a few people on the sidelines, we'll say this, I cannot specify with who. I cannot really specify a lot of details about the plot and all that because it's still very early. I have actually been tapped to help write a screenplay for a feature film to potentially turn into a sort of cinematic universe that is loosely taking inspiration from some of my occult and paranormal and UFO knowledge, combining it into a certain franchise, and we'll see how that goes. It is, I think, the official statistic as far as how many projects like this go through, see the big screen for rather, is quite literally one in almost 250,000. So the odds are not in my favor, but there's some promising results. But it's all in spite of my showmanship, for obvious reasons. I have been in the field dealing with a couple investigations Some involving UFO reports in my neck of the woods, which, dear Lord, I thought we were past the age where everybody thought that funky things in the sky were angels. Look, they may be the inspiration for angels from back in the day. I'll give you that. But just goes to show why Idaho is so far behind the rest of the United States. I mean, and this is why I get so tensed up when I start seeing religious zealotry patterns in people, because their so-called faith and devotion, I have seen so much of just so much turmoil, so much abuse in the name of whatever faith they happen to follow as their excuse to commit shit. And it's just like, it reminds me of a clip I've seen float around from the Kevin Smith movie Dogma, where I can't remember his name, but he's from My Name is Earl. He's also plays Dave Seville in the live action Alvin and the Chipmunks movies, where he talks about how humanity essentially made hell worse because they could not handle the fact that they were committing certain atrocities. So they try to blame it on other factors. And dear Lord, stuff like that makes you really sit back and be like, you know what? It ain't wrong. People are not taking responsibility for their own actions, and it's causing a lot of grief. What does that have to do with these investigations? Well, it's kind of why I've held back on publicizing a lot of details in regards to some of the cases I've worked. I've written about them. I've even based a few other projects around some of the things that have happened. But it goes back to a case I worked when I was 16. It was the very first official poltergeist I ever worked. And it turns out the poltergeist was a pissed off mother-in-law. Now, all jokes aside, people try to assume that they think mother-in-law is gone demonic. No, she was pissed off because the husband in that house was beating the shit out of her daughter, his wife, in order to cover up an affair. It's messed up, man. It's messed up. I've also been involved in assisting in documentation and tracking of a potential stalker for another client. And I will say this because that individual has tried to stir up some accusations about me, realizing my connection with it. Knock your shit off, all right? Or we will be pursuing legal action. That's enough. Just enough, okay? Risking everybody going into heart attacks ain't worth this. It ain't worth it. You know? That's all I'm going to say about it. And we know it's you. We have the paper trail. We have screenshots. And authorities have been notified. So, on you how you want to play that card. And I'm sorry for everybody else that had to drag this out, because unfortunately this individual doesn't seem to respond to much else. Oh, let's see what else. I will update as more information comes forward. So, maybe some of y'all, we can meet up and check out some shit in your local area. But there has been discussions. Unfortunately, one potential location fell through, which sucks, but it happens. where I'll be hitting the road here soon. That'll be fun. Once I have more information about all that, I'll be sure to pass on along because I would love to have some chats with y'all. I know I've made a habit about, kind of firing off and letting my temper get the best of me, but you know what? I've come, I'm tried to get myself into a certain habit of thinking, right? Probably not the healthiest, but it's the facts. And it underlies this. I can rage out for all the crap that's stirred up, cause problems, raise blood pressure, all that fun shit. And even though I may be able to mend certain bridges, in reality, I'm only putting myself in the fire because, well, I'm approaching my 30s, and I've noticed that's usually about when most of my family start having issues with certain health reasons. And I'm a big boy, and I don't want to be hauled out to an ambulance through a forklift because I had a heart attack and nobody else around me has the strength to carry me out. So, try to remind myself of that little tidbit to say, hey, you can fire off, but in reality, you're only destroying yourself. So, see a couple people dropped off. Not a lot of interesting stuff. I would try to do some sort of sky watch right now, but I don't know if you hear it. But it's very cloudy, very windy right now, so not exactly the best conditions. Even though the time right now would be absolutely perfect to try to see if we can get somebody to come out and play, but perhaps another day once things get a little bit more settled. See what else. I will say this. In these coming days, where more and more people are becoming accepting of ideas that are considered fringe or supernatural, we do ourselves a favor. And I'm urging this because there's a lot more people who are reaching out to platforms on like social media because they don't exactly know where to go to look for help or info about what's happening to them or what they've seen. But can we please not assume that things are the absolute worst outcome? I'm going to tell you why. And there was a question that was floated my way about someone who believes that they have someone remote viewing them at night. Now, granted, this could be, in my experience, the conditions that were presented to me as is, where this person seemed like they were just getting up and they would swear they would see what looked like a soldier watching over them. Like, okay. Now, I think the main thing I noticed with certain people is that with the mention that it was possibly a remote viewing incident, they assumed it was some sort of spy work because it was a soldier. Here's the thing. When it comes to situations like that, especially if it's a soldier, because let's say, for an example, this guy probably seen some action, took a few blows, which have been known to trigger psychic ability. Okay? Following me here? It would not take much for that individual to accidentally remote view. And why would they focus on this particular individual? Maybe they thought they were pretty. So And if this individual who I'm talking about happens to see this, like I said, just follow my advice. Just try to put together any information about this individual. This is what I would advise others to do. Do what you can to try to focus on this person's. If you feel safe, if you don't feel like there was any negative intention behind the situation, trust your gut. If you don't feel anything negative going on aside from the usual spook of finding someone you don't recognize at the foot of your bed, it's understandable. I should probably get myself something to eat. Uh, what you can do is try to focus on this individual. Try to get as much detail about them. What are they dressed like? How tall are they? Skin color. Focus on the broader aspects before you start trying to focus on more intricate details like eye color. They have any scars or tattoos visible, things like that, because this could be a number of things, and there's not enough information presented forward for me to determine an appropriate course of action otherwise. Seeing maybe, just maybe, this is someone the person knows and it's just not clicking at the top of their head right at the moment. Or in some cases, it could very well be a spirit. And you don't necessarily have to be a special individual for these things to show up. It can be something as simple as obsessive intrusive thoughts for certain individuals who have heightened psychic potential. It would be very hard to officially test this in accordance to mainstream science for obvious reasons. But I know I'm kind of rambling off, but the main thing is try to understand what is happening before you jump to conclusions. Because there's a lot of moving parts about what's going on in the world. There's a lot of moving parts, what goes on with each and every one of us. And we're not there to see the full picture. Even if the day were to come, and I made this joke several times, where we could somehow take like a Neuralink implant, connect it to a computer, download our memories from the day onto the computer as like digital videos so you could physically share with other people. We're still not going to get the full picture. It's very difficult to get the full picture. Even if you have a special, soulmate twin flame kind of bond with whoever you're talking with. You never get the full picture. You have to be able to work with it because there's numerous things that can be done. And I'm also saying this in regards to some alleged photos I've noticed circulating of a potential downed aircraft. Now, I agree with some of the skeptics in this regard, especially thanks to the lack of, context. For God's sakes. Where was this photo taken? What day was it? Who all was there? How can we be so oblivious? The minor rant aside, and for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, there's photos that are started to circulate around. It seems to be the same stream of 3 photos with 2 of them attached with light enhancements. And I have to agree with some of the skeptics that until I get some more information about what's going on there, it looks like somebody made what looked like something out of you would expect out of Star Wars with fiberglass and either shot it or hit it against something hard. But I digress. I want to know a little bit more information before I officially determine what's going on. It's also important to actually try to investigate every claim as thoroughly as possible, because though it's not quite there yet, it will be in the next few years. We have programs like artificial intelligence. There's Unreal Engine. For those of you who don't know, it's mainly used for game design, but it's also used for CGI, for computer generated imagery. And the latest editions of that are so photorealistic that it's hard to tell that it wasn't like a real video. And and if you look at some of the promotions for the last Matrix video using Unreal Engine, you'll see my point. Things are becoming a lot more accessible for people to be able to potentially fake evidence with minimal knowledge required. So we also got to be mindful of what's potentially out there. As far as video generation, because I'm saying this because there's a lot of people already jumping the gun with certain videos. AI is not quite there yet. I give it about 5 years max. But let's be more mindful. Let's keep exploring. And for most of all, regardless of what side you sit on when it comes to all this, let's do a little bit more to be more human to one another, to care more, to actually treat each other with kindness, regardless of the person's background. Now, if they're legitimately out to harm you, that's one thing, but if we are, and this really goes out to a lot of ET community that treat disclosure like it's going to be the coming of the Messiah. If we're going to truly be accepting of extraterrestrial races coming down, finally, if you were to walk into a place and see everybody at each other's throats for what seems like petty BS, would you really want to be hanging out with those people? I highly doubt it. If you did, there's something wrong with you, and you should probably be seeking therapy. Just saying. Let's focus on being able to accept each other before we start trying to welcome our friends from the stars. Anyway, I should probably get going. So, much love. Take care. I'll see y'all when I see y'all.